everyone. For just coming in, go ahead and find your seats. My name is Ben Darnell, the co-founder and chief architect at Cockroach Labs. Today I'll be talking about our journey from starting our company to being on a track for an eventual IPO. So we're here in the startup lounge. I'm here not at Cockroach Labs is here not as a current startup. We're an 8-year-old company. We're making Cockroach DB, the distributed SQL database, and we're here to kind of come back as alumni of the Google Startup Program to share some lessons we've learned along the way, so that you can maybe learn some things that you can apply in your own startups from our successes and maybe some of our mistakes that we've made as well. So this talk is going to be organized into 3 phases of your company's life cycle. First, we're going to talk about going from 0 to 1, or nothing to something. This is the kind of the earliest, most intense phase of a startup's life when you're trying to build something both a team and a product from scratch. And I want to actually back up a second. We're the makers of Cockroach DB. This talk is not about Cockroach DB. It's about our company and the journey that we've taken. So if you're interested in Cockroach DB, please do find us in the hall outside this session, or go to our booth in the main expo area. But in this half hour, we'll just be talking about the company and not the product, because you really are building 2 separate things when you're making a startup. You're building building your product, but you're also building the company that's going to be able to scale and sustain the product. So stage 1, you're going from nothing to something. In phase 2, we can kind of label 1 to 10. These are not meaningful numbers. They're just kind of to get the general idea of orders of magnitude scaling steps. But in the 1 to 10 stage, you're taking your first cohort of users, your first version 1 of your product, and trying to make that get some repetitions out of that to find really where you fit in the market. And then phase 3, for going from 10 to 100. It's all about taking the lessons that you learned in the earlier phases and the products and organizations that you've built, and really scaling that out and building it out to something that can go to a massive scale. So starting out in phase 1, going from nothing to something. What do you do when you just have an idea and you want to make that into a reality? So of course this is a very risky process. Let's start with some kind of dismal statistics to maybe set the mood. More than 90% of startups fail, according to the Startup Genome Project. And then even of the ones that succeed, well, what does success look like? Well, one of the forms that success can take is an acquisition. And I've had the good fortune to be a part of three acquisitions in my career at various startups. All of them happened very early on. And as you see in this chart, acquisitions can be, most of the acquisitions that actually happen very early on, even pre-Series A. And when you look at these acquisition numbers, they're kind of a mixed blessing. They can be a very good financial outcome for the founders and employees of these startups, but in an awful lot of cases, these really are an exit, in the sense that you're shutting down your product that you poured your years of your life into, starting to work on a new project assigned by the acquiring company. All 3 of the acquisitions that I've been through have been more acqui-hires or talent acquisitions than acquisitions for the product, and those products were all promptly shut down. So if you're in this for the long haul, once you get past Series D or E levels of funding, then your company kind of gets too big for an acquisition, and so you're really looking at an IPO as your biggest target as your main target for an exit. So with that in mind, if you're wanting to build for the long haul instead of something that's going to flip relatively soon, what do you need to do as you're starting your company? For most of us, starting a company is going to have to involve fundraising fairly early on. So what do you need to do when you're looking for your initial fundraising? This could be a seed or a Series A. Different approaches depending on your startup and what you need as far as how much capital, how many people, things like that. But whatever you start with, you should look at your early investors as advisors and partners and not just a source of money. Your early investors are likely to end up on your board of directors. They're likely to stay there for quite a long time. Cockroach Labs, our first investor was Benchmark. Our first round was led by Benchmark Capital, and our partner at Benchmark is still on our board of directors today, 8 years later, and he's been one of our most valuable partners and advisors throughout the whole process. A really good investor can provide way more value than just the money that they bring in. And so when you're considering your investor options, you should really, I would recommend being willing to compromise on a lot of the financial terms in order to get the best partner and advisor for the long term. Early on, if you've just got an idea, that's a great start. But it's not ideas are cheap. We've all heard the saying, it's 10% inspiration and 90% perspiration. And that's certainly part of it here. You need your idea, and then you need to put in the blood, sweat, and tears to make it a reality. But even that is not enough, because if you're just even if you've got the best execution in the world, you may be aiming to the wrong spot. You may not be going where the market needs you to be. And so you need to have a vision that can guide you where you need to be, where you're going to find your market success. And so this is, you can call it a vision, or my co-founder Spencer calls it the will to power. You need something beyond just an idea and execution. To really be successful and be able to take a startup to IPO scale. Another thing that's important to think about from the earliest days of your startup is your company's culture. Culture is something that you may not put a lot of thought into. At some of the previous startups that I've worked at, we didn't. You'll have a culture whether you plan for it or not. It's just a question of what that culture is going to be. And it's important to be really intentional about that. One of the failure modes that I've seen for this is, our hosts here at Google famously have a very generous corporate culture that revolves around lots of perks, lots of things that kind of keep employees at the office, free food, lunch and dinner, even laundry services at the office. And when we were starting our startup Viewfinder in New York City, we knew that we didn't want, that wasn't the right culture for us. No one wants to do their laundry at the office in New York City. Everyone's commuting by subway. It just doesn't make any sense. We looked at a culture that we tried to, we thought our culture was just going to be, okay, everyone comes to the office, works hard, goes home at the end of the day. They can have dinner with their kids, or whatever they want to do. And so we did that, and we thought we were doing okay, but we ended up with a very fragile company, in the sense that we weren't forging those social ties within the company that would enable us to survive the inevitable rough spots that occur. And so with Cockroach Labs, we were much more deliberate about it. We had seen that. We'd seen that rocky road before, and so we tried to invest more in building a culture, with team ski trips, weekly team dinners, and things like that, to try and bring people closer together and make it a much more pleasant and satisfying place to work. These days, the big question around culture is, are you going to be in an office or remote or some kind of hybrid? I'm not here to say what the right answer is. We're still kind of navigating a lot of uncertainty in this space ourselves. Again, it's important that you have a thesis about what kind of culture you want, and build for it deliberately. Finally, a big part of our culture at Cockroach Labs is we believe in being generous with equity in the people that are joining us on this journey. We think it's one of the best tools you have as a founder for aligning incentives and getting everyone on board. But it's something that's not talked about as much as cash compensation, and it's difficult to compare across companies. And so we wanted to make sure that we had a way of allocating equity across our early employees that was going to be fair. We didn't go all the way as some companies go with radical transparency and actually publishing all these details, but we wanted to design our process so that if it were to become public, that it would be reasonable and defensible to all of our employees. So we came up with a very quantitative way of doing this. We built a formula, kind of a simple exponential decay based on someone's sequence in the hiring order as a multiplier, giving a multiplier to their level, so that the earliest employees got a multiplier to their equity allocation that reflected the extra risks they took by coming on in the first couple of months instead of later on in the process. And we were aiming to hit some rough benchmarks. The first 20 employees would get 10% of the equity, the next 20 would have 5%, and so on. So that concludes my talk about the phase one of growth. But so now we're moving on into the phase for growth and scale, where we're going from 1 to 10. So here you've got your first cohort of users. You're starting to get some feedback from the market, and now you want to make sure that what you have is that you didn't just get lucky with your first few customers. You've got something that you can repeat and bring to market at a larger scale. So the thing that's absolutely critical to keep in mind in this phase, and something that we struggle with at Cockroach Labs, is that you've really got to narrow in on a focus. You can't speak to every potential customer at once, because if you try to speak to everyone, you're speaking to nobody. And this is something that we found really challenging at Cockroach Labs, because our product, CockroachDB, is a SQL database. Every business in the world uses SQL databases, so we thought, well, we're building for everybody. That's our biggest possible addressable market, and that is, kind of in the end game, that's where we want to be. But when you're going from your first customer to your 10th, you can't spread your efforts too thin. You've got to really narrow in on who you're building for, who's going to be delighted with your product in spite of all the limitations that it still has, because it's version 1 or version 2, and it's not your competitors who have had maybe a 30-year head start on you. So one of the ways that this came up for us is the difference between building a cloud service versus an open source or even a closed source product that people download and host themselves. These days, I think this would be a fairly easy question. Everyone is very enthusiastic about adopting the cloud for everything. But 8 years ago, it was very much an open question when and whether big companies were going to be ready to use a cloud-hosted database as a primary system of record. And so we started out as an open source project, for one thing, but we also started out as a product that you would download and host yourself on your own hardware or on your own virtual machines. And that was I can't say that was a mistake, because the market wasn't ready for a transactional database as a cloud-hosted service yet. But in retrospect, or if we were starting again in 2023, we would definitely be looking more at the cloud. And then the other thing we learned doing this the hard way is that we thought that doing both a cloud service and an open source download product would be much more complementary to each other than they were. We thought that we'd be able to build our open source product, and then it would be a simple task to go run that as a cloud service. Or you may look at it the other way and say, well, we'll build a cloud service, and then we'll just package up parts of that and then sell it to customers who aren't ready for the cloud. That turned out to be way harder than it looked. It's really, going down that route is really building two completely different businesses. You've got different cost structures, different go-to-market motions. There's much less overlap between the two models than we had anticipated. And so again, that division of attention is really difficult to manage while you're still trying to find your footing in the market. So again, even if you think what you're cutting is a big potential market for the future, it's always better, I think, at this stage to stay narrowly focused on where you can win and where you can make your customers the happiest. This is also generally the phase when you're starting to build out your go-to-market function, especially if you are, as we were, a company with co-founders who all came from a technical background. You've got your product built, and now you've got to sell it. Your founding team is likely to be involved in all your earliest sales, because you know the product better than anybody, and for the success of your company, you need to know your customers better than anybody too. But sales is very much a specialized skill as well, and if you're an engineering founder, you're probably not going to be as successful as you could be if you go into sales calls directly. So you're going to want to build out your sales team, and you're going to want to start with someone who's a hands-on account executive or similar kind of experience at a small early stage company, ideally. Because you want someone who's going to be focused on execution and not necessarily someone who's going to be the best sales manager or a VP of sales or CRO. So this early sales leader, they may be someone that only is the right fit for your journey for a couple of years, and that's okay. You may need to replace them with someone with a different skill set later on, which I'll talk about in a few minutes. But at this stage of the game, what you need most is someone who can do the hands-on selling work, and this person needs to have a very curious and experimental mindset. They'll be going out into the market that you're trying to develop kind of from scratch. They've got to see what works and what doesn't, and help you narrow in your focus on what's going to work. Finally, another thing to keep in mind in this stage is you want to make if you started out hiring the investors that are going to be the best advisors, then you want to make sure that you're getting that value out of them. And one of the main channels for that are your board meetings. A board meeting is a great opportunity once a quarter to take stock in where things are going. We write up a board briefing document every quarter. It's maybe 6 or 8 pages long. Includes a summary of everything that's going on in the company, what our goals are for the next quarter, what our key results are for how we'll know that we're meeting those goals. And we've got these documents, dozens of them now, going back years, where we can kind of track the progress of the company. These documents have been a useful byproduct. We've been able to show them to other investors doing their due diligence, or to new executive hires to see the track that we've been on. And so just stopping to reflect on the state of the business can be really valuable in its own right. In the board meetings themselves, it's pretty typical at this stage for a company to have a 5-person board with 2 seats reserved for the investors, 2 seats for company insiders, and a fifth independent board seat. Your investors, as I said, are great advisors. They've seen a lot of things. They haven't done as much generally, or what they have done, they've done further in the past. So that 5th independent board seat can be a good place to bring on a board member who does have more hands-on operational experience, and especially something that complements your co-founders. So someone who has more experience in sales or marketing if your founders are from engineering, or maybe someone with more of a technical background if your founders are more business oriented. But it can be a good way to improve the diversity of perspectives on your board and get a committed advisor with a different set of expertise. Another thing that you can think about here that doesn't seem to be very common but has worked very well for us is to think about who's going to be on the board from the company, or representing your common stockholders. It's most traditional for this to be 2 of your founders. But often your founders have similar backgrounds. In our case, we're all engineers. We all spent substantial portions of our career at Google. It's not the most diverse perspective. It's not very useful having 2 of us in the room or on the board. And so we decided that that our second co-founder on the board would step down, give that board seat to our chief product officer, who has a very different background, and we think that was actually a really good move. Bringing his perspective into the boardroom was a big step forward in the operation of our board meetings and the value that we're getting out of them. So this is something that I haven't seen nearly as much as I would expect, given how well it worked out for us. But it's definitely something worth considering. So moving on to phase 3. This is where you're really on the runway trying to get the plane to take off. You've got an idea of who your ideal customers are, and you've got your sales motion worked out. Your first phase of sales anyway, and now you've got to figure out how you're going to scale this to bring in the revenue that you're going to need to hit your escape velocity for your IPO, or just for profitability, or whatever targets you're aiming for. So in the early stages of selling, there's a lot of intuition that's involved, and it can feel kind of random, especially if you're in the enterprise software space. You've got a relatively small number of highly valuable customers, and it can feel kind of random why some companies choose you and some don't. But at scale, once you've got 10 to 20 salespeople out in the field, you're really starting to form a lot more data about what's working and what's not working in your marketing and sales processes. And so it starts to get a much more quantitative, almost engineering type of approach. And so this is a stage where you start to think about bringing in an experienced VP of sales or CRO whose role in the business is not going out and closing deals on their own, but in building and running the machine that's going to bring in those sales. And done right, this becomes this can kind of smooth out a lot of the lumpiness that can vary quarter to quarter as deals come and go. You should be should really focus on your revenue operations skills at this stage to have a repeatable methodology for forecasting, territory segmentation, things like that. You should be able to predict your next quarter's revenue much more accurately than you were in earlier stages. And this is a very distinct skill set from an individual account executive, the kind of people that you may have been hiring in earlier phases. But it's really crucial for scaling up your organization. It's also good practice. Things like the forecasting methodology, that's going to be critical as you approach an actual IPO. You need to be able to provide public guidance on future revenue. So you really need a systems thinker who can put together the machine that's going to make the business run. It's vital at all stages of your company's journey to put your customers first. The mindset you really need to have is that our success ultimately comes from our customers' success, and this is something that can sounds simple and obvious. But as a company scales, it's easy to take your eye off the ball. Maybe you're putting in if you originally had your engineers doing technical support, and later on you put in a dedicated customer support organization, engineers may be insulated from the customer to a degree that they don't necessarily see what's causing the customer pain. Or you may find that your incentives have driven some sales in which the deal was oversold, and then the customer is unhappy with what they had purchased. So it's better to undersell and over deliver to build that customer trust for the long term. So whatever form it takes for your business, you've got to ensure that everyone up and down throughout the entire organization always keeps the customer's needs at the center of their planning and thinking, so that you're all moving towards establishing those happy customer relationships. Finally, as you grow, in some ways the CEO job is always the same, but in other ways it's completely different as the company continues to grow. I think there's a saying that comes from SRE, site reliability engineering, which is that you want to automate yourself out of a job every 6 months. In the role of a CEO, there's kind of a similar pattern. You want to hire yourself out of a job. Whatever you're doing, you want to hire out the team and the leaders that are going to take that responsibility for you. So your role is in some ways your role is continually changing, but there are certain elements that are kind of the North Star that will always be there. As CEO, your role is always to define and sell the vision, make sure that everyone in the company knows what you're building and why. You got to keep the money in the bank. Always make sure that you're spending your money responsible so that you can keep the lights on. And then you're bringing in that next wave of people who are going to be running the company along with you. So that's kind of our lessons learned in the 8-year journey of Cockroach Labs. Just to summarize, I'd say the top 3 things if you want to take away from this presentation. I think first it would be seek advisors and not investors. These are going to be very valuable partners throughout your company's life. Build your culture deliberately. Don't just let it be kind of the default that emerges from throwing 6 people in a WeWork and seeing what happens. The culture is going to be the foundation on which everything else is built. And it's not something that you just do once and you're done, because all of us have seen over the last few years culture is shifting very dramatically with the move to remote work, and in some cases the move back. So always be deliberate about how your culture is evolving. And finally, stay curious. This is it's a long journey, and things are always going to be changing and shifting, and you've got to be alert to how things are going and where the market is taking you. So curiosity will serve you very well in seeing, oh, well, that's interesting. Is this something that I need to dig into and fix, or is this a new opportunity for us? That sort of thing. So we have one final remark here from our hosts here with the Google Startup Program. As I said, Cockroach Labs is an alumni of this program, or at least the version of it that existed 8 years ago. So if you're eligible, it's free money for your cloud computing costs. So it can be a great help when you're starting out. So if you're eligible, I would encourage you to take a look at that.